Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dear viewers, Assalamu alaikum. I'm your host Faisal Raza Khan and you are watching Foresight. Viewers, as you all know that Pakistan's economy is showing signs of resilience. Even the macroeconomic indicators are showing positive results. But major challenges still remain. And the huge one is the state-owned enterprises. We have to resolve these issues. Then broadening the tax base. It is very important for Pakistan to have ample revenue for development and have debt retirement. Then obviously, the debt burden is the huge one. Then the circular debt in the energy sector. Obviously, we have to enhance our exports through value-added products and enhancing the industrial base. For that matter, we need cheaper energy and low cost of doing businesses. Then obviously, Pakistan in recent years slightly improved our exports. Then overwhelming growth in our remittances. Stock exchange performance is absolutely brilliant. Improved reserves to tax reforms and obviously the investment potential. We will try to explore what's actually working and what needs an urgent fix. Can we stabilize the economy, attract foreign direct investment, and control the fiscal pressures? And with an ambitious growth target of 4.2% for the financial year 2026, can we turn this ambition into an achievement and a growth in a sense while ensuring the growth reaches to the common citizens? This is very important. When the economy goes trickle down to the public, that is the real dividend and that is the real growth. So to talk on this very important aspect, we have in our studios Dr. Hidayat Khan. He is the head of Department of Economics at the National University of Modern Languages, Islamabad. Thank you very much, sir, for your presence here in the studios. And with him, Dr. Shujaat Farooq. He is Director Research at Pakistan Institute of Development Economics, PIDE. Thank you very much, sir, for your presence here in the studios. And online in a moment will join us Dr. Hasan Zafar, Political Economy Analyst. And he actually joined us. Thank you very much, Dr. Hasan Zafar, for being with us online. Thank you very much for your valuable time as well. My first question to you, Dr. Hidayat, what are the current trends in Pakistan's growth potential, the growth rate particularly? How agriculture industry, especially the large-scale industry and services sector, are actually driving the growth rate as the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank and the Asian Development Bank projections for the fiscal year 26, GDP growth rate 3% to 3.6%. But we have set the benchmark of 4.2% for the next fiscal year. What is immediately required to achieve this ambitious target? As the last fiscal year 2025, we set the target of 3.6%, but unfortunately we achieved only 2.7% or even less than that. And this is according to the Pakistan Economic Survey.
Thank you very much for having me. If we look at the previous fiscal year performance, so as you have mentioned, the government has set a target of GDP more than 4%, but unfortunately we were able to get less than 3%. And if we remember,
no, it was last year, we set the target of 3.6%, yes, but achieved only 2.7%.
Actually, last year as well, IMF and Asian Development Bank has projected the economic growth of around 3%.
Yes.
So
yes,
this year, as you
to be very realistic, it was 2.8%.
Yes, yes. So this year, like as we have set the target of 4.2%, and we are expecting growth from agriculture sector and large sector and then services sector. If my memory is correct, last year we have recorded a growth of less than 1% in agriculture sector. So how can we push it around 5% this year? That is the real question, especially for me. The second thing is large sector. Large sector also underperform.
You are talking about large scale manufacturing.
Yeah, large scale industry. And the third services, yes, the performance of service sector was comparatively better in previous fiscal year. So we can expect some growth in that. In order to bring back agriculture to the heydays, or when we were getting 7 or more than 5% growth in agriculture sector, I must say that what physical or what tangible the current budget is proposing to uplift the agriculture sector, first thing. Second thing, what enabling environment has been provided for the growth of large scale industry or large scale sector. Either we have provided ease of doing business, either we have lower transaction cost, or either we have removed red tape from the existing procedure. So if there are some tangible and some viable on the ground parameters for that, then we can expect growth in agriculture sector and large industry sector. Otherwise, I don't think so that we will be able to meet the target of our potential target of agriculture growth and large scale industry for.
But I think so we should have to be hopeful, because this is just a start of the next fiscal year. So I think so that if we take the real and serious measures, we can grow in these sectors. Dr. Shujaat, the government is trying hard to have a broadened tax base, but according to the several reports during the last fiscal year, 11.72 trillion actually collected. Against the downward target of 11.90 trillion. That reflects a shortfall of 178 billion till June 30th, 2025. But we have to remember that the initial target that was fixed for the fiscal year 25 was actually set at 12.91 trillion. While the current fiscal year 2026, the target set at 14.13 trillion, and it's approximately 9% more than compared to the fiscal year 2025. How it could be achieved, and what's required urgently, where the Federal Board of Revenue reforms and digitization stands right now, and how it is going to complement and supplement the real target which is now we envisage for this year.
Thank you, Faisal Sahab. Faisal Sahab, if you look the last year target, it was quite ambitious, because we were at 9 trillion and we set the target of that 13 trillion.
Approximately 13
approximately.
Yes.
So ending up with 200 billion shortage, I think that was not a big deal, because you set a target with 28% increase in your that tax revenues, and it was a great success. If you look in our tax to GDP ratio, that after a long time we were able to improve our tax to GDP ratio. So this has happened. Now coming to your question, this year that we have the target of 14.13 trillion. So from PIDE we have calculated that the one thing is that where naturally your tax will increase, because you have set a target of 4% GDP growth. So definitely when there will be growth, that there will be more revenues collection.
Right.
Second, there is inflation. So that when you have 7-8% inflation, so definitely your revenues would be more. And third, that you have to take on certain measures through which you have to collect more taxes. So we have calculated at PIDE that you will meet the target of 13 that trillion. Now you require another 1.3 trillion, for which you have to take on certain measures. So government have taken certain measures, because that if you look the budget speech, they are asking that we will broaden the tax base. There are certain new taxes, like for example you can see the carbon tax, there is levy tax, there is certain adjustment in that federal excise duty.
But Dr. Shujaat, still unfortunately the ratio of the indirect taxes are more than that of the direct taxes, and number one. And the second is, the recent reports actually suggest that income tax only, I am talking about income tax, that salaried class actually paid 545 billion rupees tax, 3 times more than that of exporters and 8 times more than that of retailers. These areas and these, and we have given incentives to the real estate as well, but where is taxation?
Faisal Sahab, I totally agree, because first, our tax to GDP ratio is very less. Second, you know that a large amount of people who should pay the tax, they are not paying the tax.
They are out of the tax net.
They are out of the tax. For example, you can see just 2 sectors in your economy. One is agriculture and other is wholesale and retail.
Yes.
They are contributing 45% in GDP, but they are contributing just 2% in tax. So ultimately, you know that a limited group who is already paying the tax, they are burdenized, whether it is the direct tax. So you know that it is totally, absolutely right that our tax slab on the higher income group in world, it is just 25% in other countries, but we are paying around 35%. That is quite huge amount. Second, go to GST. Again, our GST rate is quite high, 18%. In rest of the world, it is around 14 to 15%. And even you know that certain food commodities, they are exempted from the GST. So as a way forward, it is totally, you know that we have to broaden our tax base, we have to make certain enforcement, and where FBR role is quite crucial, where we have all data. So now you have to make certain enforcement in digitization, but one thing is very clear, you have to take on confidence of your public, because you know that this is the government responsibility, that whenever you do certain enforcement, it should not be policing, it should be to build trust among the publics that okay, it is the right of the government to collect tax, and definitely you know that government is paying certain services to the citizens. So we have to take certain measures.
Definitely.
That is crucial.
Absolutely right. Dr. Hidayat, what about external vulnerabilities, including the oil price volatility and the geopolitical uncertainties? Fragile current account position, you have slightly high core inflation despite easing the headline consumer price index, and continued underperformance in revenue collection. Is the State Bank of Pakistan current policy rate 11% a prudent tool for supporting the economic recovery, or does it risk undermining macroeconomic stability by easing too early?
This is a very complex and interesting question. On one hand, when the State Bank lowers the policy rate, it encourages the investment and business activities, and the cost of doing business become lower. But on the other hand, it can increase inflation. And since from the beginning of this fiscal year, we have already imposed carbon tax on petroleum products. And you know, when the prices of petroleum are increased, it is definitely increasing inflation.
Yes.
And the burden is transferred on consumer. The second thing is that, like, if the policy rate is lower, this is good for the government as well, because now the government has to pay less in debt servicing, or the debt liability of, at least for the local debt, for the government has been reduced. But the problem is that while you are lowering down interest rate, it can create instability, macro instability as well, because the economy can overheat, and when the economy will be overheating, then we have tried last 2 to 3 years to calm down our economy. So maybe if State Bank is too ambitious, we can lose the gains of our last 3 years. So I think State Bank must be very careful by further lowering the policy rate, and if it is lowering the policy rate, it should keep a check on the, because inflation will increase this year.
Obviously.
The problem
that's
is
why,
that
that's the particular reason why the State Bank is very cautious on that.
There is another problem, because if you are using base year as a last year for this year inflation, so the base was quite low. Even in the month of April last year, your inflation was 0.03%. So if you are facing inflation rate of 0.03% and there is a slight increase, this year, it will have immense effect.
But we have to go through the core inflation. That is the real point.
But the problem is that
because sometimes we actually ignore it when we discuss
the core inflation is which troubles the common man.
Obviously, yes, you are absolutely right. Dr. Hasan, according to the budget documents, projected fiscal deficit for the fiscal year 2026 is 3.9% of the GDP. That's going to be a 6.5 trillion rupees. That's the reduction from fiscal year 2025, about 5.6% of the GDP. Whether it would achieve through fiscal consolidation, the rise in the tax base, or controlling the current expenditures particularly, but would that be achievable without state-owned enterprises issues to be settled and the extra burden on the exchequer?
Thank you very much, Faisal Saab. Thank you so much for having me on your show. We talk about these things every week. I've been coming on your show for several months now, and we talk about these things every time. Yes, there are issues, but frankly speaking, it's like, have you heard of that idiom, when hell freezes over? It's a very difficult situation here that we are dealing with. Let me remind you of our Quran Pakistan program, the 5-year plan. What were the targets set? 6% growth, GDP growth rate, exports raised to $60 billion in the fiscal year 2025. So these were the targets achieved, targets set. There were 5 E's: export, environment, energy, equity, and ethics. So these were all presentations made by the bureaucrats before our learned economic team of the government. But this is not really going anywhere. The projected fiscal deficit for fiscal year 26 is 3.9% of GDP, right? That is amounting to 6.5 trillion. When your question is very pertinent, the point is very pertinent, that unless we are able to privatize the state-owned enterprises, we are not going anywhere. We cannot go anywhere because there is a fundamental question. Let's try to understand economics from a different perspective, because we are always dealing with numbers, and numbers are not getting us anywhere. What is the fundamental problem here, Faisal Saab? The fundamental problem is the culture of discipline. Our departments, financial institutions, other departments, and especially these state-owned enterprises are tremendously underperforming. There is huge disguised employment. I hope you understand, know you understand this thing, and our viewers also understand disguised unemployment, which means that where 10 people are required, 50 are employed. So 40 people are not doing anything, and that is the real burden on these institutions. Ideally, personally, I would want to see many of these state-owned enterprises staying with the government, but because some of them are very, very important for national
right.
security.
What about the overall circular debt in the energy sector? This is the one issue. And the second is, as you are pointing out about the state-owned enterprises losses. It created huge burden on the national exchequer, as revealed in the recent cabinet committee on state-owned enterprises, which was actually chaired by the finance minister. Cumulative losses of the state-owned enterprises stood at rupees 5.8 trillion as of December 2024. We are not mentioning the last 6 months of the last fiscal year, while oil, gas and the power sector actually has reached 4.9 trillion rupees of the circular debt, including 342 billion losses incurred during July-December 2024 period. During 6 months, equivalent to rupees 1.9 billion in daily losses. So how do you see the overall aspect of these state-owned enterprises, which are now unbearable to bear really, because huge burden on our national exchequer, and government is very serious on that account, but time is dragging out. So how do you see how we are going to resolve these issues?
These losses are the constant burden. The way out is simple: is to privatize these enterprises. We cannot afford to run them with government expenditures, and we cannot afford to have the number of employees that these organizations have. They have become a constant burden. So there has to be a realistic plan, a plan that is ready to be implemented. We cannot wait for it forever, because we have been talking about it every time where we sit together, but nothing seems to be happening. Remember, Dr. Bengali was hired by the same government, and he pointed out 56 departments that need to be abolished. Only one was promised, and what happened? Nothing happened. So we have this history. We have plenty of plans. You go to any federal government department, and their cupboards are full of plans. You talk to anybody, they're sitting there, they drag tons of maps and files and presentations that we are doing, and really, we hear this word, we have a lot of potential. Nobody's interested in your potential. People want to see what you are actually doing, and what are we actually doing. These losses not only hinder economic efficiency, also they are also increasing your fiscal burden. So what is required, we need to emphasize on the urgent need for comprehensive reforms, better corporate governance, transparent management. So that will guarantee some positive outcome of this from this problem. Otherwise, we can just keep talking about it. But if we are really serious to do anything, we need to take
Point well
steps.
taken, Dr. Your point well taken. Dr. Shujaat, how do you see Pakistan's debt dilemma as fiscal year 2026 will also consume actually 46.7% of the federal budget, as debt servicing allocation hit at least 8.2 trillion rupees out of the total 17.6 trillion of the budget which we have presented. So with domestic debt alone costing 7.2 trillion, the public debt represents 66.27% of the GDP. This highlights actually that straining resources for the essential services like health, education, development, while debt sustainability actually affects the credit ratings along with the investor confidence and the future growth as well. So how do you see how we are going to resolve this very issue of Pakistan's national economy?
Faisal Sahab, this is our chronic issue that we are facing over the last 3 decades. And you know that we went to IMF for 25 times in our 77-year life. So why you go to IMF? Simply, we are facing current account deficit. And why we are facing current account deficit? Because we are losing our export competitiveness, simply.
Yes.
And productivity.
Very right.
Second, we are facing fiscal deficit, as Dr. Hasan has mentioned, that our fiscal deficits that is at a worse position. So simply our expenditure and revenue that are not in an order. So last year your budget was 17 trillion, and you know that 10 trillion was allocated for debt servicing. Again this year 8.2 trillion has been allocated for debt servicing.
Yes.
So simply we have to get rid of it, because you know that if you spend your half of your income or 60% of income just to repay the debt that you have taken,
Even
not that,
sometimes we just pay the markup.
Yeah, even you are just paying the interest rate, but the actual amount is still there. So we require a very comprehensive strategy to repay this debt. First, focus on growth. We require at least 6-7% growth to repay this debt.
Definitely.
Second, you know that a lot of amount, as you have mentioned, that 7 trillion is from the internal resources. Even in this budget, 5 to 6 trillion, that would come from your internal banking borrowing. So you have to revisit the NFC award. After, you know, that 18th constitutional amendment, now federal government have very little cushion and lot of amount is going to provinces. So you have to review the NFC
Very
award.
right, very right.
Second. Third, you know that you have to, you know that you have to stop banking from your internal resources. As Dr. Hasan has mentioned, here you require certain expenditure side reforms where you can make reforms in state-owned enterprises, pension reforms, your circular debt, etc., through which you can save around 3 trillion to 4 trillion amount. So definitely, you know that you will rely less on borrowing. First, fourth, let's go to the external borrowing. I would suggest that please avoid non-productive borrowing on those projects that will not give you return. For example, if you are taking external debt dollars for Benazir income support program or many other programs, please avoid this. You should take external borrowing only in productive debts where you can build your capabilities, raise amount, and tomorrow you will be in this position to repay this debt. So
Very
you
right.
require this.
Very right. Very right, Shujaat sir. Dr. Hidayat, what about the health of the external sector, especially in terms of imports and debt servicing? As on July 2nd, 2025, according to the State Bank of Pakistan, the foreign exchange reserve stood at $14.51 billion. On June 30th, 2025, showing an increase of $5.12 billion as compared to the $9.39 billion in the last year, 30th June 2024. But State Bank reserves were actually $17.1 billion as of June 13, 2025. Decline was due to the imports and the debt repayments. While on the other hand, the China has also rolled over $3.4 billion in loans to Pakistan. So how do you see overall the forex reserves Pakistan has? Because stability in foreign exchange reserves is important when it comes to your imports and lots of other factors, and you rightly mentioned by Dr. Shujaat as well, the current account. So we have to have some sort of a balance in that whole aspect.
Okay, as you have mentioned that State Bank reserve has been increased as compared to last year, and our foreign exchange in terms of our imports bill, its capacity has also been slightly increased. The problem is that we are facing to repay around $20 billion in the coming fiscal year. So one of the ways, like the government has done to reschedule the debt, the same has been happened in case of China. What about the other donors like multilateral, bilateral or commercial loan? Beside that, our 1.5 billion euro bonds will also need to be repaid, the amount which we have borrowed from the market. So overall, we are supposed to pay $20 billion in the coming fiscal year. The first thing is that that we must have our trade deficit. If we cannot reduce it, at least we will have to cap it at the current level. The second thing is that in the previous fiscal year, remittances have given a lot of support to our external payments. So this year the government has to really incentivize or attract Pakistanis or overseas Pakistani that they can increase the remittances. The third thing is that, like as it has been mentioned by Dr. Shujaat, that we should not borrow for those things which are, or for those projects which are non-productive. Because when we are borrowing for non-productive projects or non-productive activities, actually we are increasing our debt burden. If the same is used, for example, if we are importing new technology, if we are developing our human resources, if we are adding more technological input, say Bitcoin, so it will ease down our
Definitely,
our pressure.
we have to consider the same in case of our imports, because if
Yes.
the machinery or the technology that is going to be imported, that's good. But
Yes.
if the luxury items are going to be
Yes.
imported, that must have to be curtailed.
Yes, and it is to be done through incentives and through taxation.
Definitely, you are absolutely right. Dr. Shujaat, at the end of the last fiscal year, 2025, rupee posted marginal decline against the US dollar. This was very marginal, depreciating at least 0.01% in the interbank market and down by 1.9% or 5.42 rupees year on year basis. Currency settled at 283.76, which according to the different fiscal reports, it's because of the pressure on rupee. It's just because of increasing import demand. So how much the exchange rate stability actually affects the inflation, number one, the investments, number two, and the trade competitiveness?
Faisal Saab, if we look the last 1 year and 1.5 year, the good thing is that our exchange rate is quite stable.
Yes.
So we are around 275 to 285, and you know that our state bank is usually they manage the exchange rate, that it should not be too fluctuated, because if there would be more fluctuation, then there could be certain speculations, and definitely it will you know that hit the importers as well as you know that the investors. So I think this is not a big jump if you look over the last 5-6 years. You know
Very
that
right,
we started
very right.
from you know that 150 and we end up with you know that 300. So still you know that this is in optimal level where you know that we have the reserves. Yes, real challenge is one thing is the export, because you know that still there is pressure on our current account, on our trade deficit, because exports are not rising and imports are rising. Second, you know that I think now situation is quite little bit clear, because there were certain fears of you know that Iran-Israel war. So there were pressure on petrol prices. Yes, absolutely, you know that you can see that there is hike in petrol prices. So definitely it will impact on inflation,
Yes.
as well as you know that on your import bill as well. But still I think this slight little bit depreciation exchange rate, that is still manageable. But you know that we should manage it on competitive basis, not too
But
much
the currency
dictate.
stabilization
Yeah.
at least showing positive
Yeah,
results.
yeah,
So,
but that
there
is
nothing
overall
to worry
positive.
about
Yeah,
that,
and
really.
definitely you know that government have reserve. We are in IMF program, and you know that lot of you know that bilateral and multilateral you know that donors, they are part of this program. So you will not find too much fluctuation during this IMF you know,
Very
that
right,
program.
very right. Dr. Hassan, what about the current account deficit fluctuations actually, or the current account fluctuations? As of June 30th, 2025, Pakistan's current account was in surplus and hovering around 1.9 billion as and it's largely due to the record over $38 billion of remittances and import control actually. But the State Bank of Pakistan actually warns that situation remains vulnerable to shift the trade dynamics, demand, and particularly the external debt pressures, and it could return to deficit. So how do you see this current account matter right now? Because right now we are in surplus, but the State Bank is cautioning time and again that we must have the prudent policies and we have to focus more on our exports so that we can stabilize our current account.
Thank you very much, Faisal. It's a very important question. State Bank is rightly cautioning on this matter because $1.9 billion surplus looks very good, but everything comes with a price. Now, this surplus is because we have blocked our imports, especially our heavy industrial imports, the raw material that has we have a ban on the imports, not ban because the industry is not functioning, so we are not importing. Why industry is not performing very well? Because we are the standard electricity rate is 9 cents, and it's way higher in our country at the moment. So the industry, the energy prices are really not competitive. So the big industry is not, a large chunk of industry is not working. We are not importing any raw material and it remains in surplus. But the consequence of this thing is very, very serious, very serious than we can imagine. The unemployment rate is hovering around somewhere 8%. But mark this thing, this needs to be underscored by our policymakers. The youth unemployment rate is 63% in this country. And we talk about 2% growth in our 2% annual growth in our population, which means, as our eminent panelist also pointed out, that we need to have a sustained growth rate of over 7% for next 10 years to be able to employ these young people, the youth potential of Pakistan that we are boasting about, talking about on every forum.
Very right, Dr. Hasan, your point well taken. Dr. Shujaat, what about countries' exports? That is actually the lifeline for economy. Foreign exchange reserves, then improving balance of payments, the currency stabilization, and so on. So, as according to the Pakistan Bureau of Statistics, countries' export rose by 4.6% year-on-year basis during the last fiscal year, and stood at 32.11 billion US dollar, up from $30.68 billion in the previous year. But year-on-year basis, imports from fiscal year 2025 stood at $58.38 billion, 6.57% increase from previous year when we have $54.78 billion. As a result, the trade deficit actually widened 9% from the fiscal year 2025. Now, 2024 figure we have 24.10 billion. Now it's in fiscal year 2025, it's $26.27 billion. So this is basically the increasing trade deficit we have, that is 9%. That is too much.
Faisal Sahab, if you look the last 2.5 decades and just compare Pakistan with Vietnam, Turkey and Bangladesh, these three countries improved their exports by 10 times. For example, Bangladesh was at $5 billion in 2001 and right now they are more than $50 billion. But Pakistan export during this period improved by just 3 times. So look, so basically it shows that our productivity and competitiveness, we are losing our share in international market. Very simple. And our industry is dying. Even you can see that share of industry in GDP that is just stagnant over the last 5 years, 5 decades. So as a way forward, we have to seriously think, because right now it is only the remittances that is escaping us, because you are getting some 37, 38 billion.
And realistically speaking, that is not the way out, right?
Yeah, and that is not the way out. Okay, you are exporting services, so that's good, that manpower, because look at that, every year you are exporting 6-7 lakh people to Gulf, and if these people would be in this market, there will be more pressure on your unemployment, and you know that definitely there are other social issues.
How the crises are actually erupting, particularly in Middle East and all over the regions.
Absolutely.
It means that that pressure would be on our workforce.
And you have to be prepared that, for example, if there is unrest in Middle East tomorrow, you have to take all this you know, that 4 million your overseas workflow back in the country.
I'm so sorry, actually we ran short of time. So Dr. Shujaat, very important, very important. Dr. Hidayat, be brief on that, because how much important it is that Pakistan has to maintain the balance of payment challenges. Still fragile foreign exchange reserves, we need to pop them up, and then limited domestic capital formation as well. So how critical is the foreign direct investment, and what we have to actually do, because the structural, legal, the geopolitical reforms and all others what we require, and how we can increase the foreign direct investment? That is the main question really.
First of all, if we are having significant foreign direct investment, it will bring in the much needed dollar to our economy. It will ease our
Fiscal pressure as well.
foreign exchange. It will increase foreign exchange reserve. It will ease our fiscal burden. The second thing, new technology will come, new employment will be created, but there are certain conditions for that. First, we will have to look at our legal system, how our legal system is providing the level playing field for the foreign operator. How is the cost of doing business as compared to our competing countries? And the third is political situation and law and order. So if we are having those four components at place, we will have FDI. Otherwise, like last year, we has the lowest FDI.
Unfortunately, we just the time is now ended up, so we have to finish here. Thank you very much, Dr. Hidayatullah, for your presence here in the studios. Thank you very much, Dr. Shujaat. At the very short notice, you were here. Thank you very much for that. And thank you very much, Dr. Hasan, for being with us online and very candid views. Thank you very much for your precious time as well. Viewers, you have just listened to our panelists. It is very simple. It is not a rocket science that we have to increase our export. And what is needed for those value-added products? The industrial base, the ease of doing businesses, cheap energy. Then we have to actually boost our agriculture, and the services sector is contributing, but we have to support it as well, and the small and medium enterprises must have to grow. Then it is important that we have to actually focus on enhancing our tax base into the agriculture sector, particularly in retail, real estate, exporters, wholesale, and all other sectors, because the salaried class and all others are contributing too much, and they are under severe burden. And then we have to actually make sure that our enforcement must have to be there. We don't have to harass anybody, but enforcement must have to there. Digitization of the Federal Board of Revenue and the reforms in taxation, that is very important. And we have to increase the tax to GDP ratio. This is going to be the lifeline for Pakistan's economy. We have a very ambitious target of 4.2% of the GDP growth, but along with that, we have to ensure this growth so that our revenues must have to increase. State-owned enterprises matter must have to be resolved at the urgent basis, because this is inevitable if we want to build and strengthen our economy. And we have to consider cautiously about the lowering the policy rate as well. And I think so that the State Bank of Pakistan is very efficient on that matter as well. The debt burden is the real burden, and we have to think about it, particularly if we grow at least nearly 6%, the debt burden will ease on Pakistan, and we will never have any sort of a urgency to go to the IMF once again. We have to repay at least around $20 billion in the current fiscal year. I think so this is the huge burden on Pakistan, and Pakistan has to go out of it. Otherwise, the real-time growth would be a bit a distant dream. Then exchange rate is stable, and that is the good news. The stock exchange working efficiently and bringing the foreign direct investment into Pakistan. This is the real challenge. Although the atmosphere in the region and at the global level is actually very disturbing, but we have to try hard to bring this foreign direct investment into Pakistan, because ultimately it will ease a lot of pressure from our economy. This is all from today's Foresight. It's time to sign off. Allah Hafiz.